You're listening to the Journey Podcast. Are you ready to embark on a journey of self-exploration and healing? Discover the power of shadow and parts work in today's episode. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Shadow and parts work is a transformative approach to personal growth and healing that involves exploring and integrating the various aspects of our psyche. In this episode, we delve into the topic of shadow and parts work, exploring how it can help us develop self-trust and tap into our spiritual gifts to embark on adventures with the universe. Our guest, an expert in shadow and parts work, shares her insights on the importance of embracing and integrating our shadow aspects, the parts of ourselves that we may have suppressed or disowned. We discuss how this process can lead to greater self-trust, authenticity, and alignment with our spiritual gifts. We also explore how working with our parts can help us navigate our life's journey with a sense of adventure and connection to the universe. Megan Adair is a wizard of magnitude whose main aim is to show you there's so much more available and invite you into it. Whether you'd like to relax, trust yourself deeply, change something specific in your life, or harness your spiritual gifts, Megan will adventure with you, creating ease and possibility along the way. Here is my interview with Megan Adair. Hi, Megan. It's so great to have you on the podcast. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you, and we will be talking about shadow work today. Such an important topic for mental health and holistic healing. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on here, hang out with you, and talk about one of my favorite things on the planet, shadow work.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have you. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your story to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Megan Adair. I am a wizard. I'm a shaman. I am a shadow worker. I do a lot of energy work as well. And so essentially, I am working with people to allow them to have what they desire with as much ease as possible. That's my whole aim. And it always looks like asking questions, listening to the person's body, and going from there, because it's always organic. It's always different. It's always an adventure too.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Was there anything in particular that you experienced that kind of guided you into this direction and into this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really got into this work because it was necessary for me. Like many of us, I had a bit of a traumatic childhood here and there. And like over an extended period of time, about 8 years, it was very chaotic in my life. From 8 to 15, there was a lot of just chaos, havoc, not so great situation at home. And like I knew that I needed healing. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that there was more possible. And I knew that there was more to life, and I knew that I wanted it. And I have been focusing on that in many different ways since I was 12, maybe. Yeah, just from various traumas in my life.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I find that a lot when we talk on the podcast. There's usually always something that has happened or something in particular that kind of brought us on the path that we're on now. And it kind of starts guiding us in that direction. So now you do shadow work and parts work. And do you want to explain to our listeners a little bit what that means and what that is?
Absolutely. So shadow work sounds a little mysterious. It can be a little mysterious because we're working with those things that are in the shadows, which can mean so many different things. It often means things that we don't want to look at, parts of ourselves, parts of our experience that we don't want to look at, those little things that I know I come across them on the day to day that I'm aware of in a peripheral way. And I don't always take the time, or we don't always take the time to put our full focus on them and say, hey, this thing is happening. I'm doing this thing. I'm choosing this. What is that? Like, what's underneath that? With shadow work, that's a question I ask a lot is, well, what's underneath that? What's underneath this? Because there's something that's buried underneath that's asking to be expressed. And it often will express itself in very undesirable or so-called inconvenient ways. So often it's behavioral things or awarenesses that are in the shadows, things we've tried to bury, then they won't actually ever be buried. One of the books that I kind of cut my teeth on as a shadow worker, as a healer, as just like a person becoming aware of herself and the planet is a book called Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die. And at that point in my life, I had a lot of feelings that were definitely buried alive, and I did not ever want to look at them again. And the thing is that title is really true. You can bury them, but it doesn't mean they're gone. It doesn't mean they're composting until we've attended to them and gotten that kernel of the kernel of growth, the kernel of communication that's within them. And then they can transmute, transform, dissipate, go on their merry way. Something that is always relevant to me every day and usually in shadow work is something, I made a graphic about it once. Complaints are a request for something. Complaints are always a request for something. And the willingness to look underneath and really be with that and ask, okay, well, what is this a request for? I'd call that shadow work.
Yeah. Wow, that is so interesting. And you touched a little bit on the fact that shadow work is sometimes looking at the things that we don't really want to look at. So, how do people know whether they need to do some shadow work or not? Is there some things they could be experiencing, or some things that you have experienced or run across with your clients that kind of tips you off and says, we could do some shadow work here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, complaints are definitely a thing. I would say if you're alive, there's shadow work to do. So definitely complaints, feeling unsettled, feeling dissatisfied, feeling restless, even like physical pain in the body. Something that I just love that I find so often is that physical pain is not often just physical pain. The body is incredibly conscious and the body gives us messages. And pain or discomfort or upset is often a way that the body does that. Now, maybe sometimes it's because you ate food that was way too spicy and your body's like, hey, don't do that again. And sometimes it is your body communicating to you, I can't survive, I can't live, and I certainly can't thrive if there's all of this unaccessed, unprocessed, unacknowledged trauma and pain and feelings just living in me, because it's your body that carries that as well. So I'd say any of those things, like I'm doing air quotes right now, undesirable situations, any of those things are often a request for shadow work or parts work.
And can it affect you mentally and emotionally as well? Are there any kind of things that you notice, like anxiety or a lot of stress or anything like that, when you should be looking into shadow work?
Absolutely. I mean, anxiety itself, that's a request for something. And so anxiety, stress, like depression. Depression is a huge one. Depression has been a big one for me. Also was something that my mother struggled with. And that's a big, beautiful, flashy neon sign to say, hey, there's something here to look at. So a lot of us are waking up to like, hey, like I don't have to live with anxiety, or I don't have to live with depression or stress, or like, what else can I choose that would create something different for me, that would be more fun, that would be more true to who I be? And whatever you're noticing that you're just living with, that you're done living with, like that is a call to shadow work. That's a call to attend to yourself. Maybe it is like I had a client recently that was just said to me, you know what, Megan, I'm done powering through things. I'm done just powering through and doing the thing. Like, I don't want to power through anymore. And like often like women reach that point. That's often like in the 40s, they reach that point where we're like, you know, this is not worth it, this powering through business. Anything like that, it's a call to look within. It's a call for something greater because we're all infinite beings and we all have this massive, massive magic wand that we call choice. It's incredibly potent. And when we're willing to use that and acknowledge what's present for us and what's true for us and ask some questions, then we can change so much, actually.
Yeah, I can definitely second that. It does happen at some point where you just you're done with that and you just want to feel better. You want to feel more whole and connected. So, yeah. And is there a difference between shadow work and parts work, or are those two things the same?
I would say that those two things are different. I would say that parts work falls under the umbrella of shadow work. So shadow work, we've been talking about like when you feel unsettled, there might be a complaint. I would consider shadow work a really big umbrella. And then parts work is when you are working with a different part of yourself. Often for me, that's a different age of myself. So one thing that my very first spiritual mentor taught me, her name was Marcia Mecklin. She's in Knoxville, Tennessee. She taught me is that when we have any sort of trauma, and trauma isn't actually about the event, it's about how we process the event. It's about whether we move that energy out. Like if you're in a space of fight or flight, you're going to be moving that energy out of your body. That's vital. If you're in freeze or fawn, that energy is going to be stuck in your body. So when we have a trauma, when we respond to an event from a place of trauma, we often will freeze or get stuck at a certain age. Obviously, our body keeps growing, like other parts of us keep growing and changing and maturing and developing, but there's a part of us or a piece of us that's stuck at this certain age. And so it's vital to go back to that age and dialogue with it and essentially give it what it's asking for. Give that part of us what it requires in that moment so that it can move forward, release the trauma, and integrate into the greater part of us. And that can be done with parts work. It can also be done with soul retrieval, which is a shamanic technique that I also use as well.
I was just going to ask you. So when we think about shadow work and parts work, what can we imagine that to be like to actually do this kind of work? Are there certain techniques that clients do with you, or how do you approach when you start doing shadow work with someone?
Yeah, it always depends on the moment and the client and like what feels relevant, what it feels like they're ready for. A lot of times I just move straight into shadow work where I get them really relaxed. And then we actually ask for that age of them. Like I ask, okay, how old were you when you first experienced this or when you first decided this? Whatever, again, is relevant to the situation. And 9 times out of 10, they just know, or sometimes they'll see themselves at that age. And they're like, okay, I was young, let's say between like 5-ish, between 4 and 6, or like, I know I was 7. Often they will get a really clear awareness of that age. I just keep asking into it and we dive, and then I ask for that part. So just like, I know this is so funny. The example I'm about to give is so funny, and it tells you a lot about what's normal for me and the work that I do. Just like if we're working with someone's ancestors or their teammates, or we're working with entities, with ghosts in some way, we ask the entity to step in the room and like talk to us. I will also ask that age of you or that part of you to step in so that you can be with it, so that you can communicate with it. And I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Like they experience a shift, they see themselves, they're like, oh, wow. They'll experience like the distress of that or the sadness or whatever experience that part of them is having. And the beautiful thing about shadow work is so much of it So much of it, so much of it, so much of it. I can't understate this. That's why I said that 3 times. So much of it is simply presence. It's the magic of being with that part of you that you tucked away. If we're simply willing to acknowledge those parts of ourselves, those experiences, those different ages that we were at, then a lot of times that's like 90% of dissolving the stuckness. Sometimes it's more. Often they want a hug. Sometimes they're not ready for a hug. They want to tell you how they're feeling. They want you to be present with them. They want attention. It really is reparenting yourself. If you have children, if you've ever taken care of children, and they just won't leave you alone about something, it's usually because there's something to attend to. They want attention. They want your time. They want your presence. And so presence and acknowledgement and just, I call it the magic of being with, because it really is magical. It's so simple. Like so much of this stuff is just really simple. And that can actually dissolve so much. And it also, like when I work with people, even when I do my own shadow work, sometimes there's that trepidation around like, oh my God, like that's scary to talk to this part of myself or to revisit this or to like engage with my 8-year-old self that experienced this bullying. And just that the power of presence actually dissolves our trepidation as well as a lot of the emotional stress that that part of us is carrying.
Wow. Yeah, I could imagine that a lot of your clients might feel a bit of hesitation or even fear to dig into some of the things that have happened. So, how do you support them through that? Like, how do you encourage them and give them sort of that safe space for them to do this shadow work in?
First of all, I just be that space. It's something that I'm just gifted with. Not to say, I mean, anyone can do shadow work, but I can't enumerate the times that I've had people tell me, like, I just feel like calm and grounded and safe being around you. I don't know what it is. I don't even know you, but like, I just feel good in your presence or just like safe. So I think like that's part of my magic that I bring to it. And then like the biggest thing for me is always choice. Like I will tell a client, it's my responsibility, and this is my interesting point of view. It's my responsibility to tell a client what I'm aware of, what I'm perceiving, and it's their choice whether they want to dive into that or work with that or not. There's no right or wrong, good or bad. Sometimes awareness is the first step. And like maybe for like a few days, a week, months, that's where they are with it. And they're like, okay, I'm aware of this part of myself. I'm not ready to talk to it, but I'm aware of it. And sometimes I say, like, here's what I'm aware of. Does that resonate for you? Does that feel true? Does your body say, yes, this is true or not? And if it says, ooh, that's true, do you want to dive into that? Would you like to dialogue with this part? Do you want to do some unraveling here or not? It's always their choice. It's always their choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really powerful even just to have another person with you to move through this. Like that alone is really powerful.
Yeah, wow. Now, I imagine that one of the reasons why this work is so important is for healing, bringing healing to your clients. Are there any other reasons that people undertake this journey of shadow work, or is it primarily healing?
I mean, which brings up the question, what is healing? What is healing? I would say like to resolve this upset, this dissatisfaction, whatever they're aware of in that moment in their lives, to resolve that, to bring that healing, that soothing, that balm to that. And the beautiful thing is that when we attend to these parts of ourselves that are like raising a ruckus, making a racket, asking for attention, then that always translates into different things that show up in their lives. It always translates in like, oh, I've noticed that I just have less anxiety now. Like I don't have anxiety here, or I just feel better, or like I haven't been as depressed, or like this physical pain is gone and like I don't have a hitch in my step right now when I walk. Like it always translates to them having more of themselves. So from a shamanic perspective, this is what we would call soul loss. So when you go back and you retrieve that piece of yourself, that part of your soul, and you reintegrate it, that's retrieving your own power. That is having more of you. And the more of you and your power and your vitality and all of that amazing life force that you're willing to have, you just get brighter. You just have more of you. You are more empowered. So there's a lot of things. And the fun thing is that like, I can't necessarily tell you what that's going to be. It's this adventure of like, okay, well, I connected with this part of myself. I did some healing around this. And now like my social anxiety is just like not actually, it's changed. I went to that party and I didn't feel like I had to hide, like be a wallflower or hide in the bathroom. I just like was with people and it was fine. And so it's the adventure of finding out what you've created for yourself by healing that particular rupture.
Yeah. And from your personal journey, when you did your own shadow work and parts work, what are some of the changes that you noticed in your life that started coming along as you did this work?
Oh my goodness, it's so much. When I tell people that I know today, so I'm 43, I was immersed in trauma from 7 to 15, and then also later in college. Because growing up, it can be tough. You're like, who am I? What am I doing here? Most of us have those questions. And so when I was in middle school, my friends would actually just refer to me as the mannequin behind my back because that's what it was like to hang out with me. I would hang out with my friends, but I would sit against the wall and I would say nothing. I would do nothing. I would move. Like I was in such a freeze response, like for so many years that I just didn't like, I was doing the best that I could. And that was just like being a wallflower and being frozen. And I was definitely still in a space of trauma. I grew up evangelical Christian. I grew up in Southern Appalachia. I grew up in Tennessee. And so in the 80s and the 90s in that culture, like you didn't want to let people know what was going on. Like there was this priority of like, don't let people know that things are not okay at home. You can't let people know. We have to hide this. And so I was carrying that in addition to the trauma. And so as I like moved out of that, I actually like became who I actually am. I'm a dancer. I'm this vivacious, funny, loud, irreverent, like force of nature. And that I've actually gotten to become who I am by moving through all of this shadow work. No one in my life would call me a mannequin or a basket case now. That's just not who I be. And so it's changed so much. Like I always wanted to dance. I always felt music so deeply. I actually ended up getting a degree in music in college and doing a lot of dancing, but it took a choice from me when I was like, okay, I'm holding myself in this like trauma and this shell of like fear, but I want to dance. And there was a day when I was just like, you know what? I just have to risk it and dance. I just have to do the thing. And I haven't stopped since. So it's really allowed joy and it's allowed me to be me. I'm unrecognizable from who I was then. And when I tell people that, they're like, what? You wouldn't talk to people? What? You were quiet? Yeah, I was actually.
Wow. What a transformation. And I can hear in your voice how excited you are also about the dancing, the energy. So
I
that's
love
wonderful.
dancing.
Yeah. It sounds almost like by doing this work and kind of progressing through this healing that people really peel back sort of the layers of the onion and discover themselves at their true essence again. And like you said, bring back that joy and that spark that they have that may have been covered up by so many things going on in life. So yeah, that sounds amazing. Now, you work with clients and you work with people. So do you want to go over some of your own programs and services maybe so listeners can get an idea of how they could connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm mostly doing one-on-one work, whether that's energy, it's always energy work and facilitation. So I do this online. I do it in person. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. So the way that I work is we can have a call first and chat, like what is it that's going on? What is it that's asking for attention? What is it you're seeking right now? And then we can dive in. I can tell you like, okay, like this is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm hearing your body say. Because I also listen to people's bodies. I talk to bodies and, as well, like your higher self, your larger self, your guides. and then say, okay, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I would do with you. Is that something that resonates? Do you want to go for that? And then from there, we just dive into energy work and facilitation. And the fun thing is that it's very rare for any of the sessions to be the same. Like, it's always, where are you in this moment? What's relevant? What am I perceiving? What are you perceiving? Okay, like, let's dig into that. It feels like your body wants Reiki today. Okay, great. And let me ask some questions. So it's totally led by me as well as you. Like, I'm also relying on your awareness and your choice. And then I'm just taking you on the adventure of having more, like having more of you, having more joy, having more of what you came here to have, because I mean, it's really time for that.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds like some amazing work that you do. And I hope people connect with you once they've listened to this episode and they know how to find you.
Yeah.
And we will be linking to all of Megan's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with her and maybe start some of your own shadow work with her and find out where that spark has gone, where that essence is that brings so much joy. And you can start dancing with Megan too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely. And I have there will be links to what I call an energy uplift call, just like a mini connection with me to see like how I work, if that works for you. And then I've got some what I call VIP offers that are discounted offers if you want to dive in, and 2 free meditations. So it'll link you to a page with all of these different things you can poke around and look at. And yeah, I am here. I'm on TikTok and Instagram, and yeah, doing this beautiful work that's so much fun. Healing doesn't always have to be, serious. Sometimes it is, but like, I love to laugh, and it's rare that my clients don't laugh with me in sessions. Like, it's a great thing. So
yeah, I think that's part of the healing too. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And this has been another incredible episode. And I really hope our listeners have enjoyed this journey into shadow work as much as I have. It has been fantastic chatting with you on the podcast, Megan. And I've learned so much already in the past half hour that we've spent together. So thank you for sharing this wonderful work that you do. And definitely keep shining as you touch more and more lives.
Thank you so much for having me, Petra. It's been a joy talking to you. And I'm so lucky. And how does it get better than this?
Yeah, amazing. I hope we get to do this again sometime. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. And thank you so much, Megan, and take care.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please subscribe, share on social media, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and the Journey blog. Sending you love and courage, and see you next week.